Want to use a PGR in your cereals but have no time for a separate pass? Manipulator PGR can be applied as early as 1 tiller. Just add it to your herbicide to reduce lodging, increase harvest efficiency, and maximize yields. Talk to your retailer for more info and to confirm acceptable tank mixes.
Joining me now for this week's beef market update, it's Anne Wasko of the Gateway Livestock Exchange. Anne, how are you?
I am great, Lindsay. Very good here.
How is your corner of Saskatchewan?
Well, it's very, very warm, so spring is definitely here. We haven't seen those spring rains yet, so we're still working off of the snow from last month, but it's gone, but we're still working off the moisture from that. So I guess things are good, but we're always looking to the skies here.
Okay, well, we'll see if we can send some your way. Let's talk cattle markets. Let's start, as we do, in the South, in the U.S. What happened this week?
Well, it kind of steady to better in terms of cash cattle. So in Texas and Kansas, that southern trade, we talk about traded at 182, which is steady with last week. In the north, Nebraska areas were 185. That's probably going to average about $2 higher than last week. So that's good news. That choice cutout, and here we're going to finish off April, 297. That's $1 higher than last week. It's still a very narrow choice select spread. Last night it was about $7 a hundred. Most are still expecting this cutout to get up over $300 as we head into May and June for those holiday, good grilling dates as we head into, Mother's Day, Father's Day, the Memorial Day weekend. All those, still tend to be good beef weekends. So we've got all our fingers crossed that that's still ahead of us. The other point I just wanted to bring up on the U.S. market was last Friday, we had a U.S. April 1 cattle and feed report, and it was friendly in terms of what the market was expecting. Placements in March were down 12%. Marketings, though, in March were down 14%, so that with fewer cattle getting placed but fewer getting marketed, it still left the on-feed number 1% above a year ago. And if you recall, we talked about our Western Canadian report. Now we're, under 2% under a year ago. So U.S. is still, they're going to get there as we move through the second quarter, but it's taking longer for the U.S. to get to smaller on-feed numbers than a year ago. So that good news really helped when we started off Monday of this week, really helped futures. It was a kind of a friendly report, smaller placements, and the board really responded. But since then, Lindsay, it's really been the stories swirling around bovine influenza or HPAI, really causing lots of volatility in the futures market. So it started off with a good week, but we've ended off on some, tougher news, especially if you want to talk right now about the announcement last night about Colombia.
So started strong on friendly reports and all those sorts of great things. But as you mentioned, definitely it has been a week of, further news on the HPAI front in the U.S. And yes, there were rumors swirling earlier in the week, but we did get the news yesterday that Colombia, now I will ask, so Colombia is saying no to beef right now out of the U.S. Tell us more about this, sort of what this announcement is, and then, yes, what impact it's had on the market so far.
Yeah. Well, I guess, now that we have confirmed news, it's better than a rumor, because all week it was, yes, it is, no, it isn't kind of thing. So here it is. But so it's restricting imports for beef and beef products coming from U.S. states that have dairy cows that have tested positive. So It's not all states. They are not a big importer, as you can imagine. But again, just the fact that a country has moved to this point. The other thing, USDA announced is they're going to, on this coming Monday, start requiring any dairy cattle moving between states to be tested for AI. Right. So certainly they're getting more aggressive in terms of containing the spread. Just for the numbers right now, it's been reported in 8 states and 33 dairy herds, and going back to the first one that was detected, that was late March back in Texas. So that's kind of how the news is sitting. And maybe in this case, I've always said, unknowns are worse than knowns. So now we can get this rumor put to bed and on to onto some confirmed news. The market deals better with confirmation of news than rumors.
Right. And maybe just to back up a bit, I mean, this isn't, as you mentioned, Colombia is not a huge market. It's saying, not from these, it's not going to bring in beef from these states that have positive cases. Yes, these are dairy herds, but of course, dairy cattle will end up as beef. So there's a lot going on there. But at the same time, as you mentioned, a fact at times being better than a rumor. Does this, though, sort of shed light on some of the uncertainty that can add that volatility? I mean, that this isn't a good news story per se. So overall, just this negativity, is that weighing on cattle markets overall?
For sure. And I guess the other obvious, query will be, first Colombia, who could it possibly be next? The U.S. Meat Export Federation came out with a statement as well. And, again, disappointing because this really doesn't have any scientific basis in terms of this import restriction. So anytime a border issue revolves around really not a strong scientific piece, we as Canadians know that storyline well. That's always very frustrating.
Yeah, absolutely. And yeah, we did put up just a quick note. There is our latest story is on RealAgriculture.com. We are following along. Of course, we've been asking CFIA sort of what it's doing on the Canadian side. As of right now, no positive cases confirmed in Canadian dairy cattle or beef cattle that CFIA has reported, and which of course they will if there is one. So we are following the story, of course. Seems to be a much larger U.S. story, but of course we are fully integrated in our beef system. So yes, exactly. Now we are positive people, I think, Anne. And so let's switch gears from the perhaps gray cloud to more sunshine here with the prices in Canada.
I would love to.
Yeah, let's do that.
This Alberta fat cattle market is outstanding, amazing, whatever word you want to use. This week we saw trade from 430 to 432 delivered dressed. That is trade at the upper end of last week, so it's kind of how we ended last week. But because we've spent the whole week there, we are going to see when Canfex comes out with their average later today, it should be another all-time fat cattle high for Alberta. So last week, just for the record, was 256.5. And at the same time, that also means that last week we were trading $5 over the U.S. market. It wasn't long ago we were talking about 25 under.
Right.
So big change. And I think you'll see this week's average on top of 257. So we'll wait and see what they come out with. But that's good. The other thing, Lindsay, that happens when you've got this premium pricing going on in Western Canada, any cattle that can now be pulled forward. Yeah. It wasn't long ago we were talking about backlogs. Now we're pulling cattle forward. Weights are coming down. Weights are down. Steer weights are down 35 pounds since the start of the year. The 5-year average is more like a 20-pound decline from Jan 1 to the end of April. So that's the other side of what happens when you pull fat cattle forward.
Right. Now, there is a limit to that, though, right? I mean, you can only bring so much, but it definitely does pull it forward.
Especially at this time of year, the second quarter, we're moving into our calf feds, and they need time to finish, right, in terms of that grading piece. So, there's only so much, especially on this class of cattle that we're moving into, that you can pull them forward. But it certainly goes from, the piece of bigger cattle early, meaning more tonnage, today lighter cattle equals less tonnage.
Okay, and last question then. That's a pretty... it seems like anyway, a pretty large reversal. How did we in one quarter go from this to that? Like, it does seem like we were just talking about the exact opposite. So what has factored into this?
Well, one of the things we've seen, and Sean and I talked a little bit about it 2 weeks ago, is lots of cattle. When you get into that big negative basis, you tend to have to ship cattle further to get them marketed. And so we saw lots of exports of fat cattle through January. It picked up in February, and it picked up even more in March. So once those cattle are cleared through the system and there wasn't anything behind them because we've had these smaller placements in recent months, then all of a sudden you go from too many cattle to now we're super current.
Okay. Super current. The best superhero out there. Okay. We'll leave it there for this beef market update. We'll be back, of course, in 2 weeks to do another, and maybe it'll be you and me again, Anne. Maybe.
Okay, that's great. I don't mind at all.
Well, good, because I don't either. Okay, thanks so much, Anne. Take care.
Okay, you too. Bye-bye.